Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of my Kerbal Space Program series. We are gonna head right into mission control. Here we will choose the flyby of the moon and to gather scientific data out of the orbit of Kerbal. Right here I'm just checking out some of the buildings from the Kerbal Space Center, and we will head right into the vehicle assembly building. And the craft that we are going to use is not exactly new. It's our third ship that made the orbit. And it's pretty obvious why we choose it, since it already worked once and we are just adding the parts that we got from our research. As you might have seen, I had trouble with the parts, but then I decided to just get rid of the middle wings and the parachutes for the boosters, because the boosters destroy themselves anyways. And this time we will start at night and everything looks okay, so we can start. And just like last time, quickly to 90, so we have a good angle for the orbit. And since we just hit 70,000 meter for our apoapsis, we are just gonna glide to there and use some of our fuel to accelerate and make a stable orbit. The experiment storage unit is really useful because you can use science devices like the thermometer multiple times. We are now accelerating to get the stable orbit, do a full orbit, and then return back to the Kerbal Space Center. I wanted to talk about what is at the North Pole. It's actually a base from another save game, but it carried over, and I would like to use it for doing simulations, since I wanted to do the career as realistic as possible. But what plane or a spacecraft does not run through some simulations, so everything that starts from the North Pole base won't count as started in that sense. It will be just a simulation of the vessel. Obviously I will show you guys what I do there, but just so you know. We made a full orbit, and now we will go to the Kerbal Space Center again. We'll do a retrograde burn in order to lower our orbit and land near the Kerbal Space Center. Right here I'm doing a burn to normal, so I land closer to the Kerbal Space Center. And since we don't need the lower part, we are gonna decouple it. Right here I noticed that our trajectory was way too short, and what I didn't mention is that I installed the waypoint manager mod. It makes so that I can see the waypoints actually when I'm flying, and it's pretty useful. I will link it in the video description. The re-entry was without any difficulties, so I will cut out most of it, besides the landing. We are gonna open the parachute, and the former vessel crashes into the mountain. And yeah, we are pretty far off the Kerbal Space Center, but since I don't have plane parts, I can't really rescue them. So I made the decision to let it slide this time, and let's just pretend that the Kerbal ran to the Kerbal Space Center. I also decoupled the heat shield because it explodes. At least that's what I learned the last time, and it was true. We will use the service bay as a break and do all the remaining experiments that are left, and we then go to the Kerbal Space Center. Right here we are presented with 75 signs, which is pretty good, and we are gonna use it right away. I was kind of wondering what I should take, and in the end it was a better rocketry, but since I'm gonna do another mission, my next science will go into building a plane, or getting the blueprints to build a plane. I choose the better rocketry or the advanced rocketry because of the larger fuel tanks and the better engine that it provides. The fuel tanks are good for the parts, and the better engine is good for getting to the moon. I won't do the flyby to the moon yet, but instead I will do the launch of Vostok 2, and we are gonna use pretty much the same rocket we used just now, but instead we are gonna use the new parts. It's pretty straightforward what we will do here. We are gonna first take off the boosters and the wings and take the larger fuel tanks, so we have less parts for the overall rocket. And here you can see the big difference between the engines. The stock engine has 2900 meters per second, but the advanced rocketry engine, I don't know if that is a stock engine or a modded engine, but I think it's a modded engine, has 3600 meters per second. Obviously it needs more time to burn, but it's still much more worth it, and it will help with the flyby of the moon. Everything looks good. Let's start the engine. didn't really know what exploded there, and I was kind of worried that it was a wing from the main rocket, but it wasn't anything on the rocket, so I just continued. What I also noticed is that my rocket is way more stable in terms of aerodynamics. I think it's because of the rocket engine, which is more fuel efficient. Now that we have a 71 km apoapsis, we are gonna glide to it and burn to do a stable orbit. And as you can see, I need to wait 6 hours, but I didn't want you to go through it with me because it's in the end nothing happens since I'm in a stable orbit. So I will see you when it's finished. So I waited 6 hours, well, with time warp, but who cares? And since we have done the mission, as you can see on the top right, we are gonna head back to the Kerbal Space Center. This time I didn't want to be too far off the Kerbal Space Center, so my predicted trajectory was a bit further away from the Kerbal Space Center. And now we are gonna decouple the lower stage again. The re-entry itself was nothing spectacular again, but we are still far off the Kerbal Space Center. Our former vessel is soon gonna crash, and we land near the mountains. In game it was pretty dark, I couldn't really see a thing, so I was kind of worried that we land somewhere we shouldn't land. We are gonna do the rest of the experiments and head back to the Kerbal Space Center. Here we are presented with 68 science, and we are gonna use it straight away for the aerodynamics. And that was it for today's episode. I hope you liked it, and see you next time.